Pyrrhonism is an ancient philosophical school of thought that emphasizes radical skepticism, founded by the Greek philosopher Pyrrho of Elis. It advocates for withholding judgment on the truth or falsity of all beliefs and claims, and for suspending belief, called epoche, about the nature of reality. The central idea of Pyrrhonism is that because knowledge and truth are inherently uncertain, the best way to live is with an attitude of suspension and tranquility, avoiding the anxiety that comes from trying to establish absolute truths. Key features of Pyrrhonism: suspension of judgment, epoche. Pyrrhonists argue that it is impossible to know the truth about any matter definitively, so they advocate suspending judgment on all claims. By not asserting whether things are true or false, one can achieve mental peace and avoid the conflict and anxiety that arise from holding firm beliefs. Relativity of perception. Pyrrhonism asserts that human perceptions are subjective and can vary widely from person to person. Since sensory experiences can be deceptive or misleading, the Pyrrhonist contends that no perception can be taken as a reliable source of knowledge about the world. Aims for ataraxia, tranquility. The ultimate goal of Pyrrhonism is ataraxia, a state of mental tranquility or peace, achieved by not being disturbed by uncertainty. By suspending judgment and avoiding dogmatic beliefs, one can live a life free of the distress and frustration that come from trying to settle debates about what is true or false. Pyrrhonism and everyday life. Pyrrho's teachings were not just theoretical but aimed at practical living. In daily life, a Pyrrhonist avoids committing to any belief or view about the world, thereby remaining indifferent to contradictory claims. The idea is that by practicing skepticism, one can achieve serenity and deal with life's challenges without being troubled by conflicting beliefs or opinions. Argument for skepticism. Pyrrhonists employ a variety of skeptical arguments to challenge the possibility of certainty. For example, they argue that for every claim, there is a counterclaim, e.g., if someone argues that the sky is blue, one could present counterexamples, such as during a sunset. This process of perpetual counter-argument leads to the conclusion that no belief is ultimately more justified than any other. Key figures and development. Pyrrho of Elis. Pyrrho is considered the founder of Pyrrhonism, and his approach was focused on achieving peace of mind through skepticism. Although his original works have not survived, his ideas were passed down through his followers. Arcesilaus, a later philosopher who further developed Pyrrhonist ideas and helped shape the academic skepticism tradition. He emphasized the suspension of judgment on all matters as a path to peace. Sextus Empiricus, a prominent Pyrrhonist philosopher who lived in the 2nd or 3rd century CE. His works, such as Outlines of Pyrrhonism, are the main sources of knowledge about Pyrrhonism. Sextus elaborated on the skeptical methods and outlined various arguments for suspension of judgment. Key concepts in Pyrrhonism. Skeptical tropes, arguments. Sextus Empiricus listed a series of arguments, known as the tropes, which aim to show that for every belief, there is a corresponding counter-belief, leading to an inability to definitively determine the truth of any proposition. These tropes cover areas like the variety of appearances, the relativity of experience, and the complexity of concepts. Relativity. This concept emphasizes that all perceptions and judgments are relative to the individual perceiver. For example, something might appear one way to one person and differently to another, so no one perspective can be considered absolutely true or false. Uncertainty in philosophy. Pyrrhonism stresses that even in philosophical inquiry, definitive conclusions are elusive. Philosophers are encouraged to engage with different views without asserting that any of them are necessarily true. Influence of Pyrrhonism. Ancient skepticism. Pyrrhonism heavily influenced later schools of thought, particularly academic skepticism, which emerged from the academy in Athens. The academic skeptics, like Arcesilaus and Carneades, adopted many ideas from Pyrrhonism, although they were more willing to accept some conclusions as probable. Modern skepticism. Pyrrhonism also had an influence on modern philosophy, especially during the Enlightenment. Philosophers like David Hume and René Descartes explored themes of doubt, perception, and certainty that echo Pyrrhonist ideas. Practical applications. While Pyrrhonism is a philosophical stance, its influence can also be seen in modern discussions around epistemology, the theory of knowledge, ethics, and even scientific inquiry, where skepticism about the certainty of knowledge continues to be a central theme. Criticism of Pyrrhonism. Self-refutation. One criticism of Pyrrhonism is that it might be self-refuting. If a Pyrrhonist suspends judgment on all matters, this could include the belief that suspension of judgment is the right approach. If they assert this as true, then they contradict their own philosophical stance. Practical limitations. Another criticism is that radical skepticism may not be practical in everyday life. While the goal of achieving tranquility through suspension of judgment is appealing, critics argue that it may be unrealistic to avoid making judgments or acting on beliefs entirely. Philosophical passivity. Some critics suggest that Pyrrhonism can lead to passivity or indecision, as it avoids making commitments to beliefs or actions. This could be seen as an obstacle to making practical, moral, or ethical decisions. Conclusion. Pyrrhonism offers a radical and profound approach to philosophy, advocating for the suspension of judgment and emphasizing mental tranquility over the pursuit of definitive truth. By rejecting the certainty of knowledge, Pyrrhonists seek peace by avoiding the anxiety and conflict that arise from trying to prove or disprove beliefs. While its rigorous skepticism and philosophical methods have influenced many later thinkers, Pyrrhonism remains a unique and challenging approach to understanding human thought and experience.